Today we have a very special guest, Ms. Karen Baker. She's a former lawyer, judge, and nurse, and now she is running for the House of Representatives position against Morgan Griffith. Ms. Baker, how are you?
I'm fine today. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming out here. She lives in Florida, and she drove all the way to Hillsville to come and see me, so I appreciate that very much. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up primarily in Michigan, although I was born in Chicago, and we lived in Kansas and Indiana and Illinois, and then I was in school in Michigan, graduated from high school there, and then went to upstate New York to college, which is not the city. It's a very rural area where I went to college.
Yeah, when people hear New York, they often think New York City.
Yes.
But there's a lot more to the state than just the city.
That's right.
Yeah. So what did you study in college?
My major was comparative religion, and I had a minor in English literature.
Okay.
So comparative religion, because I was fascinated by how people engage politically through their religion, and that's been the case worldwide for eons. So different religions, different motivations for different groups. But I did the traditional study of all the different religions and read the books, and then we talked about politics and religion.
Yeah, that's an interesting major. I haven't...
Well, actually, Tim Kaine majored in that.
Really? Okay.
Yes, he did.
That's neat.
And some other people, I keep finding people that did the same as I did before they became politicians.
Yeah, he actually endorsed you too, I believe.
Yes, he did.
So
Yes.
That's a fun fact, and we can talk about that later.
Okay. I was just fascinated. I was fascinated by what drives people and how they see the world through religious lens. So my background, personally, I came from a family that had a Quaker tradition, but that did not, because we didn't live in a place where there was Quaker meeting, it didn't involve going to church, but it involved a lot of philosophical discussion and a lot of silence. But I wanted to see how all those other people were thinking about the bigger things.
Yeah, so your decision to study religion came from a place of curiosity.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Would you describe yourself as a curious person?
Always. I always want to know more. I always want to look it up, read about it, talk to people about it, no matter what it is. Anything that I come across that I don't know, I want to find out about, whether that's a kind of salamander or a flower or a particular disease or someone's religion.
Right.
So,
yeah. When you were in college studying religion, did you have a career in mind that you wanted to pursue?
I had two careers in mind. The first one was that I was going to continue in academia, get my PhD, and teach. And the second was more activist.
Right.
I grew up and was very active in anti-war protests. That was the time of Vietnam.
Right.
Anti-war protests. I was very active. I went to a lot of protests in Washington. I canvassed in communities, talking to people about the war. And so I was interested in being an activist of some kind. When I graduated from college, I took the GREs and the LSATs, LSAT being for law, and did very well in both of them, so that didn't help out any. So I still wasn't decided, but I went to work. And I worked in Washington, D.C. for a liberal lobbying group. And did that for 2 years, and that was during Nixon's downfall and all the stuff with Watergate. So I was researching Watergate, and that sort of decided it. I decided to go to law school because I decided that I wanted to fight for the good fight.
Yeah.
So I went to law school.
That must have been a busy time.
It was a very busy time, yes. And I went to law school in Washington, D.C.
In D.C., okay. And I believe you went to a Catholic university?
Catholic University of America, yeah.
Okay. And are you now religiously Catholic? Or?
No.
Okay.
Catholic University is a research university.
Okay.
It's a very large and well-known university. The law school is fairly small, very rigorous. Not Catholic in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
It just was Catholic's law school.
Okay, that makes sense. I was reading about you before the interview, and I saw that you had went to a Catholic law school, but you had mentioned Quakerism in your website. So
Yep.
I was confused, and I wasn't really sure.
Yeah, well, a lot of people that aren't Catholic go to Catholic university and
Right.
teach at Catholic university.
That's
Although it is, there is a school where seminarians go. That's part of the university, but much of the university is not at all religious in any way.
Okay, I see. You went to law school as an L1, as they call it. What was that experience like?
Well, I put myself through law school, as I did college, by the way.
Right.
I worked throughout college and paid my tuition and my living expenses and did the same thing in law school. It was a time of great, I mean, I had a lot of curiosity about all aspects of the law. Of course, what you hear about the way law students are treated, some of it's true, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But it was just a fascinating experience. I loved every minute of it. I also worked for the Department of Justice as a law clerk while I was going to school. And to help defray my expenses, I sold sandwiches every day. So every night I made like 30 or 40 sandwiches and then rode my bike to school and sold them at lunchtime. And then in the afternoons, generally after class was over, I went downtown and rode my bike and went to my job as a law clerk. And that was very interesting too. So it was and I lived with a group of people in a house, and it was, just a very vibrant time.
Yeah.
As it should be. You should really love what you do,
Right.
no matter what it is.
Right, yeah.
And I loved it.
Like you mentioned before, went to law school with this idea of being an activist.
Yes.
Did your curriculum reflect that interest?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that law school has changed in the past few decades, where there were almost no extracurriculars or what do you call them, courses that are your choice. It was a pretty much you had to take all of these aspects of the law. But what I loved the most, I loved labor law and constitutional law.
Yeah.
And so that kind of informed which way I went when I went to work.
Right.
And you'll ask me that next, won't you?
I will.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. You've graduated law school
Yes.
after 3 years. And,
Yes.
You work as an attorney?
Yes.
A trial attorney?
Trial lawyer, yeah.
Trial lawyer.
I worked for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission from the time I was a baby lawyer forward, and I worked in a division that did large-scale litigation against major corporations for systemic discrimination, meaning it wasn't representing an individual who felt wronged. It was going after the whole system that a corporation had for its hiring or advancement or whatever.
Right, yeah. Looking out for the little guy.
Yes.
Representing those who otherwise wouldn't be able to be represented.
Yes.
Yes.
That's been what my whole life has been about. Really, my whole life.
Yeah.
When I worked in large-scale litigation, I never lost sight of the fact that we were working for people.
Right.
People who had been denied jobs. The first very large case I did was EEOC versus Sears, which was in the mid-'80s, and it was an investigation that the agency started in the '70s. We went to trial in 1984 after 3 years of discovery, which means you're deposing people all over the country and getting documents and file dumps and all sorts of things. So we were suing Sears because it didn't put women in jobs that had commission sales jobs.
Oh, okay.
And Sears's position at the time was that, and this sounds ridiculous now, but that women liked to be social in their work and didn't want to be that cutthroat competitive way that you had to be to get ahead in commission sales. And so women would be working in the candy section or gloves or women's clothing, all of which were non-commission.
Right.
What was commission was, of course, the things you might imagine, like lawnmowers and tools, but also sewing machines, washers and dryers, refrigerators and stoves, things that women might have some passing knowledge of, but they didn't get hired for these jobs at all. And Sears' position was it's because they didn't want them. Not that Sears wouldn't hire them, but they just didn't want them. And our data, our interviews of people, and we're looking at millions of records because this was a nationwide lawsuit, showed us that no, that was not the case. So we ended up having a year-long trial, a whole year in Chicago, and we lost. the judge believed, Sears, that women just really didn't want to do commission sales. But during the course of the litigation, Sears was amping up its hire of women into commission sales.
Oh, of course.
So ultimately, the result was the same.
Yeah.
But they did it, they cleaned up their act during the course of everything. So at the end, they were hiring women for commission sales. So in a way, we won anyway.
Yeah.
But that was my first big case.
Yeah. So
And yeah.
interesting. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Have you had any other?
Interesting cases?
Well, sure, but cases where you may have lost in the court, but you've won in society.
Actually, no.
Really?
After that, I mean, that was a huge case, and
Yeah.
it involved sort of just a change in the way women were viewed over the course of 10 years.
Right.
Because it was 10 years from the time the investigation began until the trial was over. And the way that women were viewed changed radically during this period.
Yeah.
So it was an unusual case. Because of its scope, and because of the rapidity of social change during that period.
Right.
So other cases, I generally won.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so let's talk about some cases that you won.
Okay. Okay, you want to know about some of them?
Sure.
Okay, well, let's see. In 1986, this is ancient history, I realize.
No.
But I sued the state of Mississippi. It was retiring its game wardens. Well, it started retiring its game wardens at age 60 and said that the reason was that at 60, people were subtly unable to do the job on account of their age. But we couldn't figure out how, but we knew that they would be dangerous. And I sued them on the basis that no, 60 isn't old.
Yeah.
And if somebody can't do the job, you can figure out, you can test to determine if they can do the job or not. You don't need to fire everybody at age 60. And but the law, these were law enforcement officers. And across the country, the general accepted law was that nobody was going to win on an age case involving law enforcement because the idea, that it's people running and shooting and yeah, exactly.
Maybe not so much for a game warden, though.
Actually, game warden job is the most dangerous law enforcement job in the United States.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
More game wardens are killed on the job than any other category of law enforcement. So it actually is dangerous. But
Is that environmental or?
no, these are people being killed. Everybody in the woods has a gun, right?
Right.
Everybody does.
Right.
And a lot of things that a game warden has to enforce, a lot of laws the game warden has to enforce, have very stiff penalties.
Right.
And for example, if you if you shot a spotted fawn, you could go to jail for 5 years and lose your guns. And there's a law too about the things you use to do the hunting or the shooting or the fishing or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
That if you're illegally doing this, you can lose everything associated with that, which includes your guns, but also your truck.
Oh,
and
right.
also your boat and the trailer and yeah. So there is some danger in getting caught doing something bad that can cause game wardens to be killed out in the woods and no one's around. I mean, it's
hard to prove.
Yeah. So anyway, I spent a year in Mississippi and worked with game wardens and took experts in cardiology, exercise physiology, in industrial engineering, which is just looking at the components of a job, and other specialties, and had my people work with the game wardens so that they actually saw what they did. So we spend night times in a bean field in the middle of winter waiting for people to come to poach deer out of season, in headlighting deer, and we looked at people poaching fish or trapping without licenses.
Right.
All manner of different aspects of the game warden job, but all performed in the deep woods. And in Mississippi, those woods are very deep.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we went to trial on that case. A lot of cases we settle, but the state of Mississippi was just adamant that they had to get rid of them. It really wasn't about age, in my humble opinion. It was about people being paid more and being able to get rid of them and hire newbies on who earned much lower salaries because they didn't have the seniority.
Yeah.
But it was all couched in, oh, we're protecting the people of Mississippi.
Was there any aspect of, these game wardens are close to hitting their pension years, and we don't want to have to pay out on their pensions?
Well, they were state employees, and so they did get a pension,
Right.
and there is that aspect to it too. But you have it right. It was basically monetary,
Right.
as opposed to public safety.
Yeah.
But it was couched as a public safety issue. We have to get rid of them.
Sure, yeah.
And what we showed was that if somebody's physically unable to do the job, it's very easy to test for that. If there's something wrong with somebody and they can't shoot straight anymore, it's easy to test for that.
Yeah.
And as far as the subtle mental declines that the state alleged, it's pretty easy to test for that too.
Right.
Because what happens if somebody is losing it, as we say, is that it's not what goes are very well learned behaviors. They tend to deteriorate. And anybody that's ever had someone in their family have Alzheimer's knows what I'm talking about. First things that go are kind of simple things, like going to the grocery store and not knowing where it is or something like that. It's not some novel creative thing. It's everyday stuff.
Right.
But anyway, we showed that 60 was not in any way indicative of a time when people would be unsafe. It's not. People die from sudden death heart attacks in their 50s. People get Alzheimer's, that creeps up on them much, much later.
Yeah.
So, but we had a 2-week trial where we brought all of the experts in and talked about what they had seen and what they know and their areas of expertise, and we won. And it changed the law.
Yeah.
It was the first time somebody won a case involving law enforcement officers and age limits. So it was a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big, and it was awfully fun.
Yeah.
The whole year was just amazing. So...
Well, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Okay. Well, let's see. Of course, this is all ancient history, but I sued Boeing. Now, this is back when Boeing was the preeminent airframe manufacturer in the world. Okay, not like now. Not a butt of jokes, but it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And Boeing was retiring its test pilots at age 60.
Oh, okay.
Why 60? Because in the 1950s. Airline pilots negotiated a contract for themselves that allowed them to quit flying at 60. Because, again, these in the 50s, these were people that were World War II veterans.
Right.
They'd been through it. They didn't want to work forever.
Yeah.
And 60 was a lot older in 1950 than it was in 1980 or now. A lot older. Yeah. That's really old. Yeah. So they negotiated this contract, and then it became incorporated into law through lobbying to be the age 60 rule, which is that airline pilots flying ticketed passengers cannot fly after 60. So after that, all of the airframe manufacturers and private industry, everybody adopted the age 60 rule. But unfortunately, pilots were no longer old at 59,
Right.
and they were no longer wanting to retire at 60.
Right.
So I sued Boeing, and like I said, everybody in the whole country used this rule, no matter what. NASA used it for its test pilots, corporations used it for their corporate pilots, airframe manufacturers, and of course the ticketed passengers on a Delta or a United. They did by law, but nobody else had this law restricting them. This was just practice, and nobody was going to change. Again, it does have to do with money,
Right.
because
Pay them more
years and all of that.
Right.
And it was a sense that they had liability. If somebody crashed a plane and they were 61, somebody would sue them saying, well, the law is very clear and it's a standard for safety, although originally it was not a standard for safety back in the 50s, but it became one.
Of course.
So anyway, so I sued them, and we went through a very long period of discovery and fighting. And ultimately, we settled. The lawyers for Boeing, and this is, we're on opposite sides, but we wanted the best for the pilots. They wanted the best for Boeing. And we decided that this could be done, because I had all these experts who talked about how you know if somebody's doing well, and I actually studied the records of many pilots and showed what was predictive of decline. And a lot of times these declines were in their 50s, so it wasn't in 60 had nothing to do with it. Once again, sudden death, heart attacks, 50s, early onset Alzheimer's, late 40s, early 50s. And in fact, in those cases, there were records that people could have read that would have showed them, we have a problem. There's a problem. I'm thinking of a couple people in particular, but there were records that were just like forgetting to put your harness on. That's like automatic. And if somebody's not doing that in check rides repeatedly, there's a problem. But it has nothing to do with age. It had to do with other things. So anyway, ultimately we settled the case, and then we started down the road of other airframe manufacturers, and we ended up not having to go to trial, and most of them we settled them. I had one case that was brought by a pilot who was flying U-2 spy aircraft for a particular firm, and he was going to be retired at 60, and we came in to get a preliminary injunction to allow him to continue flying, and the judge wanted to have a mini trial on this preliminary injunction. The preliminary injunction is that we're likely to prevail, so let the status quo prevail until we get to trial. That's what a preliminary injunction is. And sometimes there's a little mini trial along the way.
It's a good sign for you.
Huh?
It's a good sign if you're granted one.
Oh, yes, very good sign. So we went to this, basically he testified, and the judge said, well, I'd like to expand on this. I'd really like to have you come in 2 weeks and we'll spend more time. And he said, I can't. And he said, why not? He said, well, I'm on assignment. Well, where's your assignment? And he said, I can't tell you. He's flying U-2 spycraft, and this is during the first Gulf War. So I can't tell you. And the judge kind of, and finally we argued back and forth, the company lawyers and us, and the judge says, I'm granting the preliminary injunction. You can keep flying till we have this trial. And we didn't end up having a trial. We settled. And so it was really good. We did go to trial, oddly enough, in a corporate case where they wanted their corporate pilots to retire at 60. It's like, wait a minute, we've got people flying U-2 aircraft. We got people testing, brand new aircraft. I even, NASA I couldn't sue because the EEOC could not sue the government. But I went and had a talk. With the general counsel of NASA at the request of pilots that were coming close to 60 who were flying experimental aircraft, big time experimental aircraft. And he and I decided that they could keep going and that we would just change the internal regulations. So that was very, it's just to get a momentum going. And anyway, ultimately I ended up, the trial for the corporate went our way because everybody else was now letting everybody fly after 60. And I ended up testifying before Congress about changing the law. And ultimately, not like the day after I testified, but it was kind of exciting because all my guys were all there and they were, yay. And the Congress did change the law. So now it's everybody flies after 60.
That's a big change.
It was a big change, but it took, a series of actions and years and lots of things.
So this whole time you're working for the government?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you ever venture into private practice?
I thought about it. I didn't make much money. I mean, many people would say it was good money, but I lived in Washington, D.C. I mean, I was a single parent. No, the money was not great. And I thought about it, but I loved what I do. I loved what I did. And I was ultimately in charge of this division, and I could bring cases, somebody could call me up. As the case was with the U-2 pilot, I was in my office one night, I got a phone call, and he said, hi, I'm going to lose my job because I'm 60. I know you're doing something. Can we talk? And that's how that case started, with somebody calling me in my office from California and we brought his case. So I got to do really amazing things working for the government. And I was also on the side of the good guys. And
Right.
remember, I wanted to be an activist.
Right.
I didn't want to be a corporate lawyer.
Right.
I almost went once where somebody was offering a firm job that was really not corporate, but it was, no.
No.
No,
I believe I read on your website that you do pro bono work
I
nowadays.
still do. Yes, I still practice law. I mean, I am a member of the bar,
Right.
DC bar. I do pro bono work now, but very limited. Obviously now it's very limited because this race.
Right.
So I represent people for disability claims because I did that for 17 years as a federal administrative law judge.
yeah.
I do know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it's just people that really need help. I don't take any money from them. And I don't, lawyers who represent claimants for Social Security get 25% of the back benefits. And I'm not talking about that. I don't take anything. I just take care of it.
Yeah. So let's talk about pro bono. How does that work exactly? Do you have your own like on paper firm that you work for, or you just
No,
does
I
someone
don't.
just
I
call-
don't.
Someone call you and be like, "Hey, can you represent me?"
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much that's it. I mean, this is very low key. I mean, obviously there are large firms that have whole departments of pro bono people
Right.
that take on big issues. Like I used to do for the government, they take
Right.
them on a pro bono basis. This is very small time pro
one-to-one.
bono. Me and somebody that needs some help.
Yeah. Okay.
And I, so that's what I do. But only federal practice because I live in Virginia. So if anybody's thinking that I'm practicing law illegally in Virginia, I only do federal work in Virginia.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're working for the government at this time, and somewhat, I don't want to say common, but sought after path for lawyers is to become a judge eventually. Do you have your mind on a judgeship?
No. No, I did not.
Did you just kind of fall into your lap?
Somewhere in the mid 80s, a bunch of my friends and I, we all applied for this federal administrative law positions. There was no openings. It's a process that you go through that takes years, and at least it used to. And it involved, you had to have at least 7 years of trial experience, and you had to go through a process of written applications, and then you had to identify everyone you ever worked with in any of your jobs. And they being the people that did this, which is the Office of Personnel Management in Washington, sent out questionnaires to everybody you ever worked with, both sides. Like if I sued the state of Mississippi, one went to the lawyers for Mississippi, that kind of thing. Actually, all of the lawyers, because you had to put every single person that and every court you appeared in, and they sent them to judges. And so it was a huge, long process. Where it's like, well, you apply and then someday they might offer you a job, but it's not anything you're thinking about right now. So I got the word that I had been chosen for this job. I was in the hospital. I was sick. And I got it and I said, because trial law and traveling all over the country all the time, and never eating a decent meal, and red eyes from California back and getting the office and working, and it was really hard.
And being a mom, too.
And being a mom, and trying to, everything. It was a lot of juggling. And my son was 12 years old when this happened, and I thought, he's going to be a teenager soon. And anyway, I decided just everything, my health, my kid. Okay, I'm going to take this job.
Yeah.
So I did. And it was it was very bittersweet because I loved what I did. I loved it. And it was time to move on.
Did one of the reasons why you went to work each day as a trial lawyer, was it to make the world a better place for your kid?
Absolutely. It was, without a doubt. That's everything I've ever done is to make the world better. That's what drives me. Yeah. And for my kid and for other kids and every kid. So, yeah. So I went to work for Social Security. Yeah.
That's a very important organization. They do
Yes.
a lot, especially for the older age group which you often represented. Can you talk about the differences being an administrative law judge versus being like a trial judge? Would that be?
Well, I was a trial lawyer, and so
Well, yes, but
I
I mean,
wasn't a judge. I wasn't a trial judge. I was just a trial lawyer.
oh no,
Yeah.
I mean, I meant more touching on the differences between an administrative law judge and, because I believe there's a difference in between like a traffic court judge or a circuit court judge.
Yeah, there's a big difference
Yeah.
between that and traffic court. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. Well, here's the biggest difference. Administrative law is law, the jurisdiction is defined by the law, particular agency law.
Right.
And it's not defined like a district court judge. The district defines the law. It's the area that you're in, and all laws, like a federal district court judge, all laws pertaining to that events occurring in that district are your bailiwick.
Right.
Okay. Now, traffic court, it's like your bailiwick is traffic court.
Yeah.
And it's all the traffic. You know.
Yeah, I don't mean to compare you to traffic court, but like,
But so you see, the difference is that my bailiwick was the laws that Social Security administers, and
Right.
any case that had been dealt with in the agency. And usually, every agency has an initial determination for something that you can. I'll explain this now. Or initial and a recon, and then it goes to trial. So in Social Security, the initial decision or the issue could be denial of disability benefits, or it could be being sued. The agency said you falsely retired, that you were not retired and you were getting Social Security benefits, but you were actually working. Or it could be a matter of a fraud in getting benefits. And at that time, it was also Medicare and Medicaid.
Right.
So I heard cases where, like, say, a heart surgeon, I'll give you a specific example, had a plastic surgeon who reconstructed the sternum for individuals who had open heart surgery. So they cracked the sternum,
Right.
and then have the open cavity, and then you had to have a plastic surgeon come in to reconstruct the sternum. And among diabetics, it was particularly difficult because diabetic healing is so fraught. And so you'd have a plastic surgeon who specialized, and this is a real case, in handling sternum reconstructions for diabetics. It was a long process in the hospital, longer than normal. It was a long process in and out of the office. So it was complicated. And Medicare said, oh, you just get the regular amount. And he said, no, that it takes twice as long. I have twice as much work, and it's not right. So he had 2 denials of what he charged for his services. And then it came to me as a trial. We had a trial about, did this make sense or not? You know, was he justified or not? So anyway, so those are the things I handled. That was the jurisdiction.
right, yeah. And
Yeah.
I understood that. I just mainly asked because a lot of our listeners may not understand the difference between an administrative law judge and like a circuit court judge or whatever.
And the
so.
difference is that administrative law, the limitation is that you are hearing cases that originated within an agency
Right.
and had initial and reconsidered decisions against the moving party, and it comes to a trial that's an administrative trial. It's still a trial, there's still evidence, there's still lawyers, but it only involves agency law, as opposed to, like, and say a federal
law.
district court judge would be hearing criminal cases brought under federal laws,
okay, yeah.
you know, like drug trafficking, or a RICO case, somebody that's engaged in a criminal enterprise, or they might be hearing tax fraud like I do, but the tax fraud is brought under by the IRS,
Right, okay.
as opposed to by Social Security Administration. So there's the district court judge, the federal district court judge, has a wide variety of case law and topics. Well, so does the administrative law judge, but a smaller number of topics.
Right. And then each agency, maybe like the FCC, would also have
Yes.
administrative law judges.
Yes, and
okay.
like the Department of Labor has
Right.
administrative law judges. The Department of the Interior, everybody has them. There's only about 1,000 in the United States.
Wow.
But what they do is they deal with an agency denying some sort of benefit or entitlement and the resulting hearing trial that occurs.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
It's admin law is its own thing. Yeah.
Did you have to be confirmed by the Senate? Like,
No, those are Article 3 judges, have to be confirmed by the Senate. And we're not Article 3 judges. We're part of the administrative state, the executive branch.
oh right, okay.
Yeah. So it's not an Article 3 judge.
So
Yeah.
Here's I don't know, this question might be stupid, but how does the overturning of the Chevron case by the Supreme Court affect your job or your former job?
I don't know. I mean, I think the overturning of Chevron,
'Cause it's
I don't
huge.
even know. It's huge.
It's huge.
I don't even know what it's going to do, because what the meaning of Chevron, and for your listeners who don't know,
Yeah.
Chevron is a long-standing rule of more than 50 years duration that said that an agency's determination of the meaning of its regulations is entitled to great deference, because the agency is assumed to be
experts.
the expert
Yeah.
in that area. So, like if the Department of the Interior issues regulations regarding elk populations in national parks, it's assumed to have had a great deal of expertise internally that produced those.
Yeah.
Well, now the Supreme Court has overturned Chevron.
Because Congress has to do it.
Congress.
Yeah.
And, I mean, first of all, let us say that Congress has its problems.
Yeah.
Is Congress going to decide what the elk population in national parks should be?
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, somebody's going to come along and say whatever the regulation said, it shouldn't say that. And under the Supreme Court rule, apparently you can overturn any regulation you want.
Right.
And it gets sent to Congress, which means, in my humble opinion, you're going to have chaos. Because everybody's going to be suing everybody for everything. Yeah. And no longer will there be any kind of constancy in what our rules are. Because administrative law governs all of our lives, right, to one extent or another. Whether it's the FDA deciding that a drug is safe or not, and that's one of the ones that that's going to be a big one.
Huge.
Can a drug be denied clearance as unsafe, and then the court says, "Oh, that regulation is no good. Congress has to decide." I mean, or the court will say, "We've decided that it makes no sense."
Yeah.
The court itself, the judge who came from who knows what background, able to decide what any of these regulations should be or shouldn't be without deference to the agency that spent years figuring it out. Yeah. So, who knows?
I know. I was really surprised when I saw it on the news, the decision, because I went to Board State last month, and Jason Miyares came and spoke to us. And one of the big things he talked about was how chevroning was bad. He called it chevroning, but the creation of regulations by agencies was improper. And he gave a statistic, like something like 95% of all laws or regulations nowadays are put in place by agencies and not by Congress, and how the elected officials of Congress should be putting them into place and not the agencies. And I thought it was an interesting idea, but I didn't really understand the ramifications of it until a couple weeks later when Chevron was overturned and I became more informed on the process. Republicans seem to prefer the overturning of the case, whereas Democrats would have preferred for it to be kept in what was
that the agencies have deference.
Right.
That an agency that had, a task force, because I've worked on these before in my career. I worked on the group that produced regulations for the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, and the task force that worked on ADA, the Handicapped Access regulations. I worked on those. I know what it does and what it takes, and the effort that's undertaken to turn Congress's law, which is just kind of a bare bones thing, into what are the rules for us to follow.
Right.
And Congress doesn't have people spending years writing regulations. And without those regulations, you think that the idea is that with the regulations, people know what the rules are. We know what we have to do. Without them, it's going to be just litigation constantly. The turning over of Chevron, in my opinion, is it's a boon for lawyers. It's a boon for litigation.
Yeah.
It's a boon for everybody and his uncle bringing a lawsuit against the agency's regulations that they don't like.
Right.
And it's chaos.
Yeah.
So yes, I believe that agencies are, for the most part, I mean, there's always mistakes made.
Sure, yeah.
And there can always be bad actors anywhere in the world. We know that, even in a federal agency. But by and large, having been in that process, I can say that the people who do this are hardworking people who employ lots of experts and, go on fact-finding missions to determine what makes sense. They talk to every kind of person knowledgeable. It's years are spent doing this. And to turn it over just because, well, no deference to you, is it's going to be chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone asked Jason Miyares why he thought chevroning was so evil, and he said that, like I mentioned earlier, that the elected representatives should make the laws and regulations, and that Congress would still employ the use of experts.
I don't know quite how it would work. Congress can certainly highlight issues through hearings.
Right.
And through papers that are put out. They can invite people to testify.
Yeah.
But when it get down to it, like when we're talking about the elk population in a national park,
I don't see that issue having a lot of importance on their radar, whereas for an agency, it would be of huge importance.
yes.
So it would just get more attention and more of a thoughtful response in the agency.
From the agency.
Yeah.
I don't know how Congress is bloated. There's too many people there anyway. And members of Congress now have to be experts in, let's say, new drugs.
Yeah,
They have to be experts in
agriculture, medicine,
everything.
Social Security,
everything you can think of.
Right. And
then it'll all be through a lens of, are we going to fight about this, about little bits and pieces of this, because Congress has become so inherently log jammed with, you're again with me or against me in everything, and there's never compromise. Right. Which is, by the way, one of the reasons I want to go to Congress, because I'm really good at getting people to compromise. But anyway, so yes, it's a problem. It's a problem, and it's like Pandora's box.
Yeah.
We shall see. Yeah. Like it is the Lawyers Welfare Act of 2024, though.
It's a big deal. After you were a judge, you became a nurse.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
You became a nurse, I read, because your husband was having some health issues, and you wanted to be able to better take care of him. Yep.
And like any decisions, it was multifaceted.
Right.
Okay.
And, it wasn't exclusively, of course.
Right. It wasn't. Yeah.
You also worked in a hospital.
Yes.
And you culminated your healthcare career a couple of years ago. I would like to talk about that later, because that's a very interesting perspective. Being a healthcare worker and then potentially creating legislation on healthcare, you have firsthand experience, which I know a lot of people in Congress don't. Yeah. And you had experience as an administrative law judge where you were
agency law.
Right.
Yes.
And that was a lot of healthcare stuff too, I imagine.
A lot of healthcare stuff. Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Let's talk about being a nurse. Where'd you go to school for being a nurse?
I went to Greenville County Technical College in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina.
Is that kind of like a community college?
Community college.
Yeah.
In South Carolina, they call them technical colleges. Okay. They're big on 2-year. They don't offer anything more than a 2-year degree, and it's vocationally based. So what I did was, when I decided to go, and I'll just tell you why I decided. Partly my husband was having problems and I was worried about him. Sure. Partly it was because I had sat for 17 years at a big desk in a big chair that was too big for me, with my elbows up on the desk and having to sit at the top of the chair. And I hurt all the time from sitting all the time and writing all the time. Right. I just felt like I'm going to die in this job. I need to get out of this sitting at a desk for 60 hours a week. I need to be away from this. And so I said, well, I know a lot about healthcare. 10,000 cases involving conditions that I had to become knowledgeable about. It's again that curiosity. Somebody comes before me, they have this. I need to know what this is, and I need to learn about this and understand what would be the reasonable symptoms associated with this, so that I could know whether what they're telling me makes sense. Things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I knew a lot about healthcare, and I wanted to have a job where I could stand and walk during the day.
Yeah.
A lot.
I imagine there's a lot of that as a nurse.
As a nurse, there's a lot of it, and that's what I wanted. I just felt like everything about me was crumbling. So, and I was done. I had 30 years in the government. I wanted something different. I wanted to be home more. And so I started going to night school to get all the prerequisites done at the community college. And by the time I finished that, I might have chosen another way to do it. But by that time, the time I finished, my husband was not doing well. And I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to just get my RN. I'm going to go to work. And you work three days a week, so you're home a lot more. Yeah. I was worried about him. So that was the decision that I made. And I worked nights because he generally slept during the late night to middle of the day. Yeah. So if I got a babysitter that came to my house at night, I could go to work and then be myself, having slept and gotten up by the time he got up, and take care of him. So it worked well to do it that way. Okay. Yeah. And I worked in the ICU, which is a
stressful place.
Yes, it is, but many nurses are very burnt out by the number of patients they have and running down the hall all the time. And my patients were right in front of me. My desk was right in front of them, and I would have one or two. Now, they were very complex patients, and there was a lot involved in caring for them. But it was always interesting, always fascinating, always learning new things. Had very collegial relations with the doctors in the hospital, because these are their most intense patients, and they're up all night with me. Right. I'm up with the other nurses on the unit. We had 8 beds, so there'd be as many as 4 nurses in, but that was for 8 people, plus the doctors. And so it was not quiet. It was very busy at night, very busy. So
what was it like going back to school after having been removed for so long?
Well, I loved it. I loved it. I loved school because I always liked to learn. I did not like algebra, college algebra, but I had to get A's in all my prereqs or I wouldn't have gotten in, because at that time it was very, very competitive to get into the school, and I didn't have any healthcare background that gave you extra points, so I had to get all A's. There was no alternative. It was the only way I was going to go. So
did you have to take the TEAS test?
The TEAS test? Yeah. What's that?
At least in Virginia, and I have several friends who have to take it. In order to be a nurse or a physical therapist or assistant or other healthcare-related fields, you have to take what's called the TEAS test for admission into, at least Smithville Community College. Okay. So I have several friends who've taken it, and it's just like basic. It's kind of like the LSAT, but for healthcare. No,
we didn't have to do that. No, didn't have to. But I knew that I took a test of some sort, and they said that I had high school level math abilities, and that they wanted to put me in developmental math, but they said, we think you're smart and we think you'll be okay in college algebra. And I got A's in both, but I had a tutor because I hadn't taken any math, since I was 16. So that was kind of different. That was very difficult. But the rest of it I loved. I just loved it and loved going to school, loved learning. I've always loved learning. Enjoy it.
It's just a kind of odd career path, like you're a judge and then you completely change fields.
Yeah, it's because I wanted to do something different. Right. And it's interesting that some people, even in nursing school, some of the professors said, well, you had a terminal degree. Why would you go back to this?
Yeah, that's what struck me as kind of odd.
Well, and people see that it's not as, what's the word? Prestigious. Well, sure. That being a judge is prestigious and being a nurse isn't.
Well, you get to help people every day as a nurse. So.
Right, exactly. It's an incredibly rewarding career, and it rewards thinking, and it rewards being able to work with people and get people to talk to you. I mean, it draws on every skill I ever learned. every skill I ever learned, but in a new way. And I wasn't ready to just kind of settle into the end of my life. So that's why I did it, and I loved it. I loved it.
That's neat. I have a lot of admiration and respect for people who change careers. I interviewed Commonwealth Attorney Roger Brooks a couple of, I guess it was about a year ago now, and he was an engineer, and then he went to law school and became a lawyer, and then eventually Commonwealth Attorney. And they're just two completely separate fields, but...
Well, the fact is that every field informs every other field,
Sure, yeah.
and you learn important things from anything you do,
Yeah.
and learning something really well translates into learning something else really
Right,
well.
right.
It's a part of your brain that you use over and over again, and it keeps you changing, keeps you smart, I think.
Oh, I agree, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just, you spend so much time getting good at one thing, and then you switch again, and you do it again, you get really good, and it's just impressive. So it's a compliment.
It keeps it interesting.
Sure, yeah.
Keeps it interesting.
But yeah, so you spent time as a nurse. What would you wish would have been different during your time as a nurse? Because you're hopefully entering into a position where you have the power to change things.
Oh, yeah.
What would you have done differently? What would you have changed?
How does it inform what I want to do?
Yeah. I
Okay.
guess.
Well, it actually informs what I want to do quite a bit. For one thing, in my hospital, I went through the hospital being a community hospital and becoming part of a for-profit hospital system. When people talk about this now, I know exactly what they're talking about. I do. And I do have grave issues with for-profit medicine.
Yeah.
It's not a secret that I believe our system is broken.
Yeah.
I believe strongly that decentralized care with well-known providers is the best way to provide care to everybody. Meaning your doctor or your nurse practitioner should know you, should have been with you for a period of time, should know if you change, should be sort of a trained observer of you and know you. And when we have a system that doctors are chasing payment for their enormous loans, so they're always looking for more money.
Right.
Insurance companies are chasing more money and telling doctors that you have to see 30 patients a day.
Right.
I mean, the whole system runs on money to an extent that patients are lost. And I believe that that's wrong. Now, I want to represent a very rural district, and there are not enough medical providers. And for the western part of the district, it's been granted a thing called ballot health, which was created to have a monopoly in the westernmost counties of Virginia and the easternmost of Tennessee. It didn't exist. It was not like a hospital and then it got a monopoly. It didn't exist. It was given a monopoly and then told you can go and buy these hospitals and you can do this for a monopoly. So it doesn't have oversight as other hospitals do. And a monopoly is a problem because it doesn't have to be responsive to its customers. In healthcare, the customers are the patients.
Yeah.
And a monopoly doesn't have to be responsive to them.
The stakes are a lot higher.
Yes. So the average wait time in a hospital in the ballot system is 11 hours in the ER. You wait 11 hours, the average time. Ballot has been a very bad system for southwestern Virginia. I believe in community care. I believe that we could provide most of our care with locally trained nurse practitioners who are not leaving to go to a bigger job themselves. They're not getting on that same,
Right. The same
merry-go-round of money,
Yeah.
right? They have roots here. They have family here. And we can produce really, really good nurse practitioners who can provide community care for their group, which means that each county, perhaps, I'm not specific about this now, but each area will be one where you don't have to travel far to see your practitioner, where you can get mental health, you get dental care, you can get eyeglasses, You can get all of your care. You can get new baby care. You can get hospice care all through your community system. That's what I want to do. I want to develop this idea, flesh it out, grow it, and see if we could start a pilot program in Southwest Virginia for these. Now, I didn't make it up out of my head, because we have two things going on in our rural districts that are good guides. One is we have a PACE program in Tazewell, Russell, and Dickinson County. PACE is a program for the elderly, and the PACE program provides total care for people who are 55 and over on Medicaid, including all that I said. Not new baby care, but otherwise everything: mental, physical, eyeglasses, dental. It provides all of that for this population, and it's scalable. We can create a birth to death community-based facility. The other thing is we have community health clinics, which is a piece of legislation that Congress passed. Morgan Griffith voted against it, to provide these rural areas with better health care. And we have a community health center in Floyd called Tri-County. It's in Floyd and in Franklin County and I don't know the other county, I don't remember. But anyway, and community health care centers are a good in-place mechanism that we can build on. They don't provide everything like I'm talking about. And they've had problems with getting enough doctors, because everybody's having problems with getting enough doctors, because doctors are chasing money to pay off loans so like I said, everything in our healthcare system is driven by money. And so who gets left behind? Rural areas where there are not enough people to provide enough mass to have big money. And they also can't provide salaries that a big city practice can. General practitioners can't pay their loans, and everybody's a specialist now because they need to make more money. So I would like to do this in our district. I would like to have community healthcare centers where people would know their practitioner, where there would be reasonable patient loads, and where we could provide full care. And we have the building blocks for that already in the district. So that's where my healthcare background comes into that.
I think Carroll and Grayson have Mount Rogers, which does something similar.
Yeah, it's a community healthcare system. But again, these they're not full service, but they're a building block. As the PACE program is a building block that we could put this together.
I definitely think that's something you could take to Congress and say, hey, we have these Mount Rogers, that does mental health and some basic general practitioner stuff. And we've seen that it works.
Yes.
We just have to make it bigger, provide more access.
More access, which means make it smaller. In a way.
That's true.
But you can always have telehealth with the big experts, and you can always take people if you need to. But a lot of what can be done with a really well-trained nurse practitioner who's from here and is staying here. And I have great trust in our nurse practitioners to provide super, super good care. I always went to a nurse practitioner. Yeah.
I think our high school is implementing a clinic through Mount Rogers where they have a nurse practitioner on site to see students, and if needed, a specialist is available via telehealth. I think that's a really cool program.
It is a really cool it really is, and that exists in other places too. And it's wonderful that kids are getting that quality of care. Now, I know that there are some, and I would say that in Pulaski County, there was one member of the school board who decided that wants to get rid of these clinics and thinks that somehow giving teens care is somehow, I don't know. I mean, he seems to think that they're not allowed to give birth control, okay? So that's not the issue. It's not that they're telling them to go out and have sex. I don't know what it is.
Do the school districts have to pay for the nurse practitioner on staff, or how does that work?
There's funding mechanisms for that.
Because that's the question I had for our school district. How does that work? Who pays for medical staff?
There's a lot of these programs have funding through block grants through the federal government, and it's not easy to find out the source of funding. It really isn't, because it might be multiple sources of funding. The school board member who was against that in Pulaski County it wasn't the funding that bothered him. It was the idea that kids were coming in talking to the nurses. He thought that was somehow undermining parental control. Whereas it's like sometimes these are the only health professionals that this child will see. And that's a really good thing to get them in school. Because here they are, and we want our population to be healthier. We want people to get care.
Recently, our school district superintendent gave a speech, and he talked about Maslow before Bloom, how you have to meet a person's basic needs before you can meet their educational needs.
Maslow, yeah.
And I thought, I never heard that before. I was like, wow, that's good.
First you start with,
shelter, food, water.
Yes.
Being safe, being
comfortable, being warm.
And then you can educate them and take them far.
Right. Then you can go on to become more educated and more self-aware. But you can't become self-aware if you're fighting just to have enough food.
To stay alive.
Yeah.
Our school district our county's pretty well off compared to others in the area, but we do have students who are not fortunate to have a meal every night at home or even clean clothes to go to school. So I really think it's great that our school district is trying to.
It's a very good thing.
I don't have any ties. It's just to brag on our county, because I'm proud to be from Southwest Virginia, and it's cool that we have options, and we can do things like this.
Southwest Virginia is a really cool place.
It is. And
it's amazing, which is part of why I'm running for Congress, because I love where I live. I love the people. I love our land and our mix of agriculture and our, it's everything about it's wonderful. And we are wonderful people. I mean, we are, as a group of people, we're very hardworking. We don't complain. We try to, just carry on. But we need things. And that's something that my opponent says that it's not his job to make their lives better. And I'm kind of like, well, whose job is it then? There's that whole very traditionalist thing that you go to Congress to pass laws. Your job is not to do anything for your district in particular. That you're not an advocate for the district. You're not a cheerleader. You just go to Congress and vote on the bills, and then you come back and you write a newsletter and tell people whatever. But you don't actively intervene to make their lives better. And let me just, for a moment, I have to say this, which is that recently, this year, he was given a fact-finding visit to the Martinsville Hospital, which had just lost its maternity care because they couldn't find doctors, and everybody was having to travel to Roanoke, which, if you're, it's a distance, and it's a safety issue when you're going to have a baby and you have to drive so far to see a doctor, to get the baby born, any of that. That's a health issue. It's a safety issue. But anyway, the doctor was talking to him about this. He's listening to her, and so what she's talking about is rural hospitals and the trouble with getting services and having to travel too far, which is that's what the whole district is about. And his response was, well, I don't think we can do anything about it, but if you figure something out, let me know. Literally, that's what he said. And I'm like, wow. It's not like it's news that we have a huge health care problem in Southwest Virginia. And that is something we need someone sort of at a higher level to work on. I mean, part of our problem in Southwest Virginia is that in terms of funding and in terms of how Richmond looks at the state and how Richmond looks at power and getting power, it's harder to campaign for us because we're so distributed over so much land. And they don't think that they have to care about us, really. That's based on results. I don't know what their internal feelings are, but based on results, we don't need to care about Southwest Virginia. So, but the point is that we deserve better. We deserve somebody actively figuring things out, like getting people together and saying, anybody got any ideas? Let's talk. Let's reimagine where we are. No idea is out of range. Let's talk. And it should be going on constantly. Because there are lots of issues and we have to prioritize them and we have to get everybody involved. But that's the job, in my mind, of the congressperson, is to percolate innovation and help the community and communities to get better, to have what they need. And needs change over time. They do. And expectations change.
Right.
I mean, 100 years ago in Southwest Virginia, like people weren't thinking about sewage treatment plants. They were thinking about the well and the outhouse. Well, that's fine for 100 years ago, but needs change. And so we're entitled to progress with the rest of the country, obviously.
Yeah, there's a joke that people around here have that Virginia ends at Roanoke. That no one considers Southwest Virginia.
I have to tell you, I went to Richmond in July, or maybe it was the end of June, and somebody was asking, well, where are you running? 9th District, where's that?
Oh, yeah.
And these are political people. So these are people that should be aware. They should know.
Yeah.
And I said, the 9th District. I said, well, where's that? And I said, well, it's south and west of Roanoke. And people looked at me like, they couldn't picture it. They didn't have any idea. Although I'm supposed to know immediately if somebody says Nova.
Right.
Oh, yes, of course.
Oh,
but
Fairfax.
if I say 9th District, people blank look.
Yeah.
Wow, you're political. You're supposed to know these things. But they don't. We really are forgotten. And I don't want that to be the future for us. I want there to be a big noise coming from rural districts about our needs for as simple things as broadband.
Right, yeah. So, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about broadband.
That's something I'm really passionate about.
Uh-huh.
I'm techie. I like my internet. The podcast relies on the internet. I have a website in my basement, and when you type in theragespodcast.com, the request goes and talks to a computer in my basement and comes back out. All of that is possible because I have internet.
Right.
And up until last summer, we had, I hate to say it, very crappy CenturyLink internet, who has a bit of a monopoly around here. For a lot of people, they're the only option. We now have Starlink. It's better. It's just as expensive, but it's faster.
I have to say that there are huge swaths of the Southwest Virginia landscape that don't even have cell service.
Right, and that's not even talking about, I was kind of talking about internet, but people don't have cell service.
They don't have cell service.
In my county, there are people who don't have cell service, let alone further west.
Exactly. You can drive through the main road through Grayson County, the whole distance of the county, and never have cell service.
Yeah, and that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was going to an event at Commercial Rockets in Grayson County. It's High Peak, and I was driving home, and there was someone broken down on the side of the road, and they didn't have a cell phone. I had a radio, so I was able to contact someone, but how were they ever going to... And it's a back road. No one was driving there. It was a miracle that
you came along and you had a radio.
Right.
Because there was no cell service.
Yeah, because my phone didn't work.
Your phone didn't. Exactly. And in the 21st century, neither of these, broadband and cell phone service, should be the norm. And for large parts of us, it is the norm. And it's just... It's a safety issue, it's a health issue, it's an education issue, it's a business issue. How can you be a farmer, who's got say taking lambs to market, and you don't have a cell phone, so if you're out there, you have to have a radio, and nobody can call you for business except if you're home on the landline. And you don't have broadband, so you can't put out any information. Right. And this is something that somebody told me recently, because I listen when I'm out on the trail. Somebody told me in Grayson County that the phone company will no longer fix the lines that go down for the telephone, for the landline. They won't fix them because they said, well, it's just we're going to get cell phone service someday, and it's not worth our money to fix them. So I'm not even going to have anything.
Yeah.
So she's got to get really involved in ham radio real quick.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's a huge problem, and it needs to be fixed. Now, how do we fix it? You tell people you're going to fix it, and there are no excuses, and there's somebody that's watching your every movement, and we figure out where are the log jams, and let's get it done. Now, my opponent put together a law, a proposed piece of legislation, which she says will solve everything. And it is that basically giving government agencies very little time to look at proposals for digging or putting up poles or basically the tech companies, if you don't deal with my proposal in 10 days, I get to do whatever I want. Well, that's assuming that there's a profit motive here. And frankly, profit in the Southwest Virginia is kind of an elusive thing.
Yeah.
Too much land, too few people, too difficult.
Yeah, it's expensive to dig.
It's expensive. And yes. So in my mind, since both these things are essential elements of being a 21st century citizen, full-fledged citizen, then we're going to have to take it on another way, which is that it's not a matter, like where I am, I got a grant from the state that took care of the $3,500 it would have cost to bring fiber optic to my house because I live on a farm, right? Well, that's nice. It's nice that I know how to do it. It's nice that I had the contacts so I could find out about it, and all of those things. But that's not the norm.
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's just not. So that means we have to take it. Basically, it's going to have to become like a public utility, where we're going to have to provide everybody, like we did with rural electrification in the 1930s.
The TVA.
You got to provide people.
And look what it did for the region economically.
Absolutely, and it would for us too.
Right.
But it needs to be done with a lot more government involvement that runs across counties. Right now, this county has this proposal in with this provider, this ISP provider, and this person's going to do the last mile of cable, and this next county has this one.
It's disconnected.
It's got to be connected, and it's got to be provided together. And the big bad word, government steps in when private industry can't handle it. Based on results at this moment, private industry cannot handle the final wiring of all of Southwest Virginia to get us into the 21st century.
It is interesting. On one side of Carroll, there's Grayson, which now has fiber thanks to the federal government. And then on the other side, there's Floyd, which has fiber. But then there's Carroll in between, and it doesn't. There's a disconnect.
Right. Well, and we got it because we have a co-op. Right. So we didn't involve big industry. Right. It was our co-op that did it, and we did it ahead of most everybody else, and really well.
You guys did it well because it's cheap, it's fast, it's available.
Exactly.
It's kind of a miracle.
It is a miracle, but it was local people. And now I know I say that can't be county by county, but my county is pretty admirable in what it did because it's a resident-owned co-op. So it was responsive in a way that maybe others aren't. But the fact is, at this point now, we've got to get her done. And that involves more than saying, oh, we'll do it, or we've sent some money. It's going to have to be a dedicated staff of people that figure it out. And I want to do that when I go to Congress because we need it. We need it for business.
I know a lot of people who would love to remote work from Southwest Virginia, but the infrastructure doesn't exist. You can't work for a big company and have your internet drop out every 5 seconds. Imagine if they did work here and then they paid their local and state and federal taxes here. That would boost the local governments, and then they would spend their money at the businesses.
Exactly.
It's just a no-brainer.
And they bring with them all the things that come with more people. That people say, well, we don't have these things. Whether it's a local coffee shop, although everywhere I go, all through Southwest Virginia, there are great coffee shops. There really are. It's happening, But, you're right. And that's what we need. And it is like our own little Marshall Plan for Southwest Virginia, right? After World War II, for those of you who don't know, Europe was rebuilt because the Allies determined that in order to have Europe be stable politically and not have another world war, we needed to rebuild them and not have them be the poor, bombed out nothing that was there. So the Marshall Plan came in and rebuilt all of the infrastructure and political systems of Europe. And in a way, that's what we're talking about. We deserve in Southwest Virginia and other really rural districts deserve that we need what other people have, and it can't just be a matter of, well, when a private company decides to give it to you, you'll get it. No, because it's not a luxury. It's a need for education, for business, for health, for safety, right? So that's one of the things I really want to work on.
That's a topic I'm passionate about, as you can tell.
Yeah.
So let's address the elephant in the room. You're a Democrat
Yes.
in a Republican district.
Yes.
A very Republican
Very
district.
Republican district, yes.
How do you tackle that?
One voter at a time.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm a rural Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And what is a rural Democrat? Well, one, I'm not interested in taking your guns.
Yeah.
I have my own.
Yeah.
I don't need yours. I understand that our needs are different.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking about that for the whole interview.
Yeah.
Our needs are different.
Right.
One size does not fit all. National politics have very little to do with what's going on in my district. If anything, literally, our needs are for healthcare, internet service, more business, our young people staying instead of leaving. I mean, all these things that we have to deal with. And I talk about that. I mean, and I even say to people, I don't care who you vote for at the top of the ticket. That's your business. Just vote your own interest here in Southwest Virginia. And I'm about us. That's all I'm about. Obviously, I don't want to have an extensive career in politics because I'm at the end of my career. But I can bring all that wisdom and experience to us to help us all to get the things we need. And I'm interested in doing it. The Republican Party, at least at the national level, including my opponent, is not interested in doing that. They're not. I mean, they say our job is not to make people's lives better. That's what J.D. Vance said, they don't want to. I do. And so I talk to people about that and I say, look, vote for me and you're voting for somebody that will fight for us for all these things. And vote for him and you're voting for someone who says, it's not my job. And if you find some way to deal with it, let me know. So that's your choice. Yeah. And I do it one person at a time. If I had a town hall in every county and invited everybody to come, they'd go, oh, she's a D. We're not going. So I can't expect people to come to me.
Right.
I have to go to them.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing since March. I go to every festival, town meeting. I was very involved with Russell County's anti-dump measures. I worked hard on that. I go to music festivals. I was in Pulaski yesterday at the music festival in Dublin. The day before I was in Stepping Out in Blacksburg talking to people. But I'm also, this week I was in, I was in Russell County for a rally, and next week this is something else I do. I go to food banks every week, and I work. I don't just go and say hi and, hand a bag to somebody, take a picture and go. Right. I work, but I also talk to people about, I'm here, I know that it's the end of the month and you don't have enough to eat, and I want to help, and I want to do something about that. And right now I'm going to put the food in your trunk, but here's my card, and I also want to do something that will really help us. And because I need to establish trust with individual voters. And one of the ways I establish trust is you see me working. I'm not one of them. You see me working, because that's what I'll do in Congress. Work for you. Because that's what I've done my whole life. And like I said, my whole life I've been about the forgotten, the little guy, the person that doesn't have so much. Because I believe in America. I believe that we are a great country, and I believe that we should set an extraordinary standard for how we care for our citizens and give everybody the opportunity to be their very best. And that's something my whole life has been about. One thing, I'm just going back to when I sued the state of Mississippi, and I was a Democrat in a highly Republican district. And I'm representing the government, which they all say is terrible. And, the government just doesn't do anything for us. And one of the game wardens, when we won, he said, I never in my whole life thought that I would need help from the federal government and that this little lady here would come and give it to me. And he said, my mind is blown. Well, yeah, that's what it's all about, is justice and caring and doing. That's what my life has been about. So that's what I want to bring to Congress. And I tell people about it, not about the guy in Mississippi, but I tell people about what we can do and how we can do it all the time. And I try to bring a message of hope too, because we're wonderful. We are wonderful, and we deserve better. So that's what I do.
I was looking back at the election results for the previous elections. I think I went back 8 years, and some of them have been pretty close.
Close?
As in 60-40. Like, it's not complete blowouts.
No, the closest we've gotten is 65-35.
65-35, okay.
Yeah, that's the closest we've gotten.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
to be honest, maybe I was a little bit naive in the stop process, because this previous November I looked at the state races, and they were blowouts, 90% wins, right? And it kind of surprised me to see the 35% for the underdog party. So I was...
Oh, so you're an optimist. Okay.
Sure, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But
so am I. So
sure.
go ahead.
I was surprised, but I mentioned that I was doing this interview to a couple of people, and people on both sides of the aisle. And every single one was like, oh, she's a Democrat in a Republican district. There's no point in running. And I thought that was kind of a naive perspective, because, okay, even if you don't win, you're still showing people that there are options, that if they don't like the main guy, that they can vote for someone else. Is that important to you?
It is important to me. Now, I intend to win.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Because my whole life is this campaign at this point.
Yeah.
I'm never home. I don't do anything that is fun other than talking to people, and I love talking to people. But it's like, I haven't gone to the beach this summer. Are you kidding me? I'm just like, no, I don't get a day off. I don't. So obviously I'm not in it to just kind of walk around and say, you got a choice. I'm in it
to win.
Win and communicating with people, because what I see is that, and this is expressed to me time and time again in different ways, because I talk to people every day, and not Democrats. I talk to everybody,
right.
And a lot of them are Republicans, because they will tell me.
Here.
Yeah, and they will tell me. Like I was at the River Turtles game, talking to people a couple of weeks ago, and there were all these older guys sitting together, and I came up and said, hi, I'm Karen Baker, I'm running for Congress, and they goes, oh, we know who you are, and all of them said, yeah, we're all voting for you, and the guy goes, I'm a Republican and I'm voting for you, another guy goes, I'm a Republican and I'm voting for you. So it's getting out there that there is hope.
Right.
But a lot of people tell me, well, nothing will change anyway. No matter what we do, nothing will change. And after 14 years of Morgan, they're entitled to think that. But I try to point out to them that things can change, but there are certain elements that are necessary for change to occur. And one of them is possibly you should get a different member of Congress who has a different view toward you and toward the job. So, I think this year he's not terribly popular. Among those people, like I see everywhere, not my people, that's my people in quotes,
right.
Not Democrats, just people.
Right.
I go up to them and say, hi, I'm running for Congress against Morgan Griffith. And people go, oh, he's got to go. He's just out in the community. Or, oh, I hate what he's doing. Or, oh, do you know that he was an insurrectionist? I get a lot of blowback from people.
Right.
But I also hear from people, like I said, well, nothing will make any difference. So that's what I'm about. Yeah. Let's make a difference. Let's do it differently.
I do think you have an advantage as opposed to 2 years ago. This year, it's a presidential election. More people are going to come out and vote. Yeah. And more people means more chances of winning. More
chances of votes. That's right.
I think a lot of time, half the battle is just getting people out to vote. Because they can support you all they want. But on election day, when it really, really matters,
they have to go and vote. They have to be energized enough to vote.
Right. So
and so that's But like I said, you can vote whoever you want.
Yeah. Just
think local. Yeah. Think local. And I've told people it is allowed to split your ticket. You can do that.
Yeah.
And people laugh, and because it's meant to be a joke. But right. Hey, you can split the ticket. There are people that. You get all kinds of blowback from people like, I'm Republican all the way. I don't need to know anything about you. All I need to know is that you're a D, and that's all I need to know. And I'm kind of like, wow, really? Really? What? But generally those people don't want to talk to you at all. I'd love to hear, what are your dreams for your life? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? I'd love to engage with them to talk about what can be done.
Right.
Because the Republicans have generally been the party of don't do anything. Do you want anything done, or is your life perfect the way it is? And is there anything that can be changed? Because a lot of people, it's not that it's just not perfect, it's just that there are huge struggles.
Yeah.
And that's what, particularly in a rural area, that's what government's needed for.
Yeah.
I'm not filtered by, I want to communicate. I want
Right.
to communicate with my constituents
Right.
and with people talking to me. I want to communicate. When I go to Congress, I intend to be back every weekend because I want to be sitting in a diner and having people come in and tell me this isn't working or that's happening. I want to know. And then I want to get the bigger group. Okay, what do we do about this? Does anybody got any ideas? I mean, I may not know. I don't know all the answers. It's just that I'm curious and I'm interested and I want there to be answers and I believe that we can make things better and I believe in progress. So that's why you have to communicate with people, right?
Yeah.
And you don't communicate a script. You just communicate whatever comes up. So it's
We've had all sorts of tangents. And,
yeah, and I enjoy talking with people.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoyed listening to you, although I did monopolize your time a little bit by talking a lot.
Oh,
So-
no, not at all. I really appreciate it. I do think that this is a good point to wrap up. Before we do, is there anything, any topic that I haven't brought up that you would like to discuss?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if you go to my website, Karen
Right.
Baker, for va9th.com.
I'll be sure to put all your social media and websites in the description.
Thank you. Because I do set out policies, like about maternity leave for moms. Oh my God. It's the only country in the Western world that doesn't have paid maternity leave. And we're telling people you should have, J.D. Vance says you'd have more children. Yeah, but if you have to work and you have a baby, you can't take off time in this idea that have more children. Yes, have them. Well, we have no childcare. We have no pre-K. We have no maternity leave. But yeah, just go ahead and have more kids. We're not going to, the Republican Party, that's your problem. Anyway, so I have positions on a lot of things. All of them are designed to be, and not designed because that makes it sound like, all of my core beliefs are about helping people to have as full life as they can and have the support that they need to do that, which cannot be given willy-nilly, and it's not easy to get it, but we can do it. We can do this.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Well,
Yeah.
I do have 2 questions that
Okay.
I like to ask every interviewee, regardless of who they are and what they do.
Okay.
The first one is, what advice do you have to people, specifically younger people my age, 18, 17, who don't know what they want to do in life?
Oh, gosh. Well, what I recommend is be curious about everything. Try things out. Seek out new experiences. Read. And not just on your phone. Read books. Delve deep into a topic on the internet and keep going down that rabbit hole till you learn all kinds of strange things. Talk to people who are doing the things that you might be interested in doing. And then finally, hey, you can try anything for a few years and change your mind.
Yeah.
Because I've done that.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. So it's to be open and curious and brave.
That's a beautiful message.
Thank you.
My last question, and you've answered this multiple times, but I'll ask it anyways.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of life to you?
Well, and it's an easy answer, a quick answer, but you could expand on that endlessly. We could have a whole discussion on it. But I will say this, because of my background. When I was 4 years old, and my dad sat me down and said, you need to understand that your life is to be lived to help other people. That's what makes life worthwhile. He told me that when I was 4. And I have lived my life that way all my life. Because that is the meaning of life, is to be in relationship with other people and help them have the best life they can, which also gives you the best life you can.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. It's been an honor, and I really appreciate you coming on all the way out here and interviewing with me.
No, I get an oil change every 6 weeks because I've driven 6,000 miles every 6 weeks. Coming to Fancy Gap is not that big a deal.
Yes, well,
Okay.
nevertheless, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.